Jesus, what are you doing in my house?
Superhot.
Hi there, my name is Fabian and today it's time to talk about Superhot. It's definitely one of the more interesting releases of earlier this year, so I definitely wanted to talk... Can you be quiet, please? Oh. It is one of the more interesting releases of earlier 2016 and got quite a bit of coverage for being an indie title. You probably heard the sentence,
"The most innovative shooter I have played in years,"
being thrown around somewhere on the internet, considering that every journalist out there used it as a headline, so there must be something to it. To sum it up, Superhot was developed by the Superhot team and released in February of 2016. It originally started as a 7-day game jam that already had a pretty convincing shape, so they just kinda continued development. The concept is simple, time only moves when you move. A couple of months later, the team took the game to Kickstarter where it raised a lot of money, and now it happens sometimes, Kickstarter does a good thing, thus giving us Superhot. So Superhot is a game about playing with time, right? Think bullet time, just that it's bullet time all the time, and time just speeds up according to your actions. Moves like jumping and running make space-time speed up to real time, and even small movements like shooting, throwing and even turning your head have a small impact too. These are all elements that are beautifully implemented into the game to the point that you have to carefully decide what your next move will be. Even a quick look to the side often decides if you get hit or not, but you really have all the time in the world to plan out what you're going to be doing next. It adds another strategy element to the shooter and really kind of creates its own thing. I could spend a lot of time just talking about the small attentions to detail put into it. In fact, that was what this video was about first, explaining how its mechanics work, how levels and enemies are designed, how it could have been expanded upon. I planned out all these fancy graphics and analyzed what options you had and how the rest fits into this, but midway through I realized that Superhot has more to offer than just that. For now I want to take a different approach to the game, so today let's discuss the narrative design in Superhot. Let's talk plot first. Superhot leaves a lot of questions open. There are a lot of things that playing the story alone and even finding all the secret messages scattered around won't really explain to you. And you will probably ask yourself a few questions after having finished it. But there is an obvious theme to the narrative, and that is power. In Superhot, you are the main character, and it starts out by letting you, the player, take care of the situation. It's about killing red dudes, and you are vastly superior to the red dudes, so naturally you get rid of the red dudes. It is then that the game decides to throw in some story that sometimes isn't written all that well. And it quickly becomes clear that the game is about more than killing red dudes. Mainly, and spoilers I guess, you getting oppressed to finish the simulation would be worth adding to the core that Superhot is running on and spread its purpose so more people contribute to it. It's a bit of a cluster truck at times, but the main concept is still clear, the question of power. Things start out easily and good until you start to realize that it's not all that simple and you are basically being used. In fact, you pretty much start out as this superhuman who has amazing time abilities until you are trying to avoid a dozen enemies coming from all sides, trying to prevent you from doing something you don't even really want to do. And suddenly you don't feel all that great anymore. The game gives you the illusion of being in charge of your actions and goals. It wants you to believe that you are in fact superior, when in reality you only serve the purpose of the simulation. It is similar to dystopian literature, where we often follow a protagonist who slowly becomes aware of his corrupt surroundings. Except in Superhot, you are the protagonist. That's frankly something only games can do, so player interaction plays a certain role. Superhot knows this, and it connects its gameplay rather elegantly to its narrative of power. Because if anything makes you feel powerful, it's what you do in Superhot. You basically can control time. You can fight a dozen enemies at once, cut a bullet in half with a katana. You can literally transform into a red guy without even having to justify what you are doing. Enemies are fairly easy to predict, so you can jump around the map, creating new ways to finish off a stage, creating literal montage videos that could only be made as a technical assisted speedrun in another game. You don't even have to be particularly good at a game to get a flashy result at the end. It is only later in the story that you realize that you don't have much influence yourself. There are even separate levels just to show you how powerless you really are. As already mentioned, you only really do what the game tells you to do. Eliminate your enemies and proceed to the end. The entire story is a spiral downwards, and you become aware of what you are actually doing. Suddenly you don't think of your powers as really all that great, levels get harder and you get way less control over your space. Through clever level design, the game takes away the sense of superiority while the gameplay stays the same. In fact, you even gain the ability to transform into different bodies after you were imprisoned for the third time and you punch yourself in the face. All of a sudden you start to question things, and since it's you who is interacting with the game, it is also you who becomes more reluctant to actually complete the game. Okay, to illustrate my point, what I like about Superhot, here's a graph I made. So, you see that one curve, it's the story progression, and the other one is the gameplay difficulty. And it really works together. Like the spikes downwards are the dark levels where you become aware of what is actually happening, and awareness grows in the story progression until the end where the climax is. It's not perfect all the time, and at times it's pretty weird, but Superhot does a good job at conveying its story through gameplay, and I really like that. Like, of course, games get more difficult, but in Superhot everything seems interconnected, like even the art style and the music. Yeah! It is this sense of unity between gameplay and narrative, heck even the visual and sound design, that makes Superhot stick out for me. Everything exists for the purpose of the game rather than just adding to it. You can clearly see how the story and everything else was built around this one mechanic of gameplay. That's what I mean with unity. I feel like oftentimes in games we tackle it differently. We get some huge writers to think of a great story, compose grand pieces of music, and then just attach the kind of gameplay that is popular at the time. In classic RPGs, you basically had an established, well-designed system to keep you busy while progressing to the next point in the story, but what does killing stuff and gaining experience points and levels have anything to do with stuff? Why is Bioshock first-person shooter when you are clearly not the main character? How does this support the narrative?
First aid kit.
And why can you teleport in Far Cry and Assassin's Creed, games that heavily rely on world building and storytelling?
We are Overwatch.
Why are they fighting each other? To be clear, Superhot's design is not as complex as the games I just mentioned, but that isn't necessarily a bad thing. Video games are a relatively new art form, and it's pretty difficult to translate certain ideas of storytelling we have from literature and film to this new thing. Instead of trying to build steady fiction with the boundaries of what games can do, we stuff all these other elements of other media into it and accept it for what it is. In Superhot, everything exists for a purpose, and the things that don't seem coherent at first are, to a certain degree, answered in secret messages. It reminds me of Fumito Ueda, the designer of Ico and Shadow of the Colossus, and his design by subtraction philosophy. Both of these games, and probably also The Last Guardian, are subtracted from all unnecessary features to convey a certain idea to make the world more immersive and believable. For example, in Ico, the initial plan included nearby villages and settlements and more expansive combat mechanics, but they were cut because it didn't supplement the main ideals of the game, the relation between Ico and Yoda, and everything that is left is supposed to be there. It's not about making the game bigger or longer, it's about creating an immersive experience. A lot of people call this a minimalistic approach to game design, but for me it isn't. It's about designing a game around artistic intentions, trying to evoke feelings and immersion with gameplay that suits the way the game is trying to convey its storytelling. And even though the story in Superhot could use some improvements, it knows what it is and is largely designed to be Superhot. Decisions like changing the art style and certain ideals to suit Superhot are made to make Superhot more Superhot. Anyway, you know the drill by now. It's a great game. I like it. Hi, it's me again. Thanks for watching. I put a lot of effort into it, so I really appreciate it. So yeah, this was the first video in this style. Got a couple of others on here, but they're a bit different. But go watch them, they're fun. So yeah, subscribe for more. Follow me on Twitter. I post art and animation and other interesting stuff. And yeah, thanks, bye.